Hi everyone. In the last lesson, we looked at several psychological and social psychological models of discrimination and prejudice. These can be very useful in our efforts to understand prejudice as well as discrimination at an individual level or within small groups. On the other hand, to truly understand institutionalized discrimination and the overall pervasive nature of prejudice, how it enters into literally every level of our lives, along with the impact of stereotyping, other models are appropriate. And in this lesson, we're going to look at an application of the functionalist model to discrimination and prejudice. Refer to pages 8 and 9 in the second study guide and chapter 9 in the textbook. But before we really begin an investigation of the functionalist perspective, there is another approach that I wanted to mention, sometimes called the culture model. And you will notice again a working explanation of it here. This is not included in your study guide, so take a minute or so to read through what's included. As you do, just keep in mind that prejudice can be built into a culture. We learn it as we learn our culture. And various beliefs, notions, and ideas, along with practices of a discriminatory nature, once we acquire them, once we learn them, they can help to reinforce inequality, to stabilize a system in which inequality is present. An example of this might be an assertion or a notion built into a culture that a society is already fair. That could prevent an honest and critical analysis of institutionalized discrimination, which often operates subtly and can enter into and affect every level of society. But I also wanted to include on this supplement the fact that some sociologists using the functionalist model highlight the fact that it can provide as well as maintain a cheap labor pool. Now I'm talking about people that are kind of in and out of work, if you will. Now in a situation like this, when you have a group or a category of people in low-paying, undesirable jobs, they're doing the dirty work that nobody else wants to do. Plus the fact that there are poor minorities who are kind of in and out of work. It provides meaningful occupations, meaningful jobs for folks. And in these jobs, they provide services to folks who are poor, who are in and out of work, caseworkers, public health care workers, social workers, and the like. Plus, if you have a category of folk who are kind of in and out of work, who are poor, you've got more or less a guarantee that they're going to buy goods that nobody else wants. Now this might include shoddily made goods, several day old bread, and the like. And also, these folks, being poor, in and out of work, they become models of what not to be. And their existence provides some folks the opportunity to feel good about giving and doing charity. Also, some functionalist-oriented sociologists will highlight, we'll build on this in more detail a little bit later on, that, again, people who are in and out of work, people who are poor, often become effective scapegoats for various social problems. Remember again, the best scapegoat's the one that doesn't have any power. So these folks don't have any power, and it's easy to dump on them, blame them for all of the problems in society. Furthermore, in an effort to do this, people at the top of the heap, again, feel we're together, we're separate. They're the out group, we're the in group. And not only are they different, but they may come to be viewed as literally enemies. Now, if you go back to the study guide on page 8, Nash highlights how prejudice and discrimination can function to benefit those at the top of the heap, the dominants, the elites, the upper class in society. Now, be very cautious. He is not advocating for discrimination and prejudice. Notice he didn't see it as admirable by any long shot whatsoever. But you've got to go back to the controversial part of the functionalist model. Anything that exists in society performs some kind of functions for someone. So his point is, in part, one of the reasons that prejudice and discrimination exists is because it provides genuine benefits for particularly those people who are in positions of control, privilege, the elites, the upper class. On the one hand, if you look at A, the system is thought to be the way it is because minorities are believed to be inferior. So you've got right there a justification for maintaining inequalities. Now take a look at B. If the subordinates start questioning their disadvantaged status, they start questioning the system, if you wish, they're really questioning the very foundations of the way things are. And by depriving these folks of rights and privileges that are enjoyed by the dominants, this is going to reduce any chance of the existing system ever being challenged, or for that matter, changed. And then last but not least, don't underestimate the influence of beliefs, mythologies, ideologies. They're going to work to support the existing system, in part by suggesting that if changing the system would actually make the overall situation worse for subordinates and would end up lowering the overall standard of living for everyone. What's rather interesting is that there are studies that highlight the fact that prejudice often increases when a society's value system is thought to be under threat. So if you look at the text and check out what your author highlights, prejudice and discrimination turned out to be very, very beneficial for the Nazi Party's rise to power by, again, focusing on Jews. They were made, specifically German Jews, were made out to be scapegoats. They were a common enemy around which the German people could focus attention. They were the ones, German Jews, responsible for Germany being weakened by the concessions it had to make at the end of World War I. Furthermore, it was because of German Jews and their role in financial affairs that led to the collapse of the German economy during the Great Depression. Furthermore, German Jews had businesses, they had bank accounts, they had property that the Nazis, once they reached a position of power, could confiscate. Furthermore, German Jews occupied many important positions in German society, from the local level all the way to the national level. And with the passage of the Nuremberg laws that really stripped German Jews of their property, their wealth, and their right to vote and hold office, very convenient for the new Nazi government, because now they could replace all these German Jews with sympathizers and with flunkies. So bear in mind again the fact that discrimination and prejudice do provide some benefits for some. Go back again to what we talked about a moment ago, a convenient division of labor, scapegoats. But at the same time, you want to be alerted to the fact that there are some serious dysfunctions associated with discrimination and prejudice. And these are highlighted on page 9 by Rhodes. First and foremost, look at A. The search for talent, for leadership, etc., is restricted to what category of people? The dominants. Look at B. Prejudice and discrimination could and often does produce segregation, which can help, along with other influences or arrangements, to produce poverty among minorities. This might in turn lead to or result in unemployment, more poverty, and an increase in crime. Now, likewise, if you notice C, the dominants are required to expend much time, energy, and resources for doing what? Trying to maintain what they got, the status quo, if you wish. And last but by no means least, discrimination and prejudice can contribute to genuine hostilities between and among categories, groups, and societies. I suspect if you look at ongoing conflicts that exist around the planet and throughout much of human history, a player in all this are various prejudicial attitudes and beliefs, and some of these led to discriminatory practices. Now, in the next lesson, we will examine the application of the conflict model. But before doing so, let me finish up by focusing on what exactly are the policy implications of the functionalist approach as applied to discrimination and prejudice. Well, basically it's this: recognize the dysfunctions of prejudice and find less destructive methods or ways of fulfilling any functions now performed by discrimination and prejudice. Until next time.